discussion. One of those is Vanderbilt. One of our favorite friends joins the show, Julian Mininsohn out of Nashville. First of all, Julian, let's just talk big picture here with this Vanderbilt football team. They continue to trudge along here. They got a game against Kentucky. It's a very dangerous team. They beat Auburn, obviously. A really impressive win also over Florida as well. What do you make of this Vanderbilt team as they go up against the Wildcats?
I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm a little nervous for this one. Just from the simple standpoint is like you mentioned, Kentucky comes in hot right now. They seem to have at least found some sort of rhythm, especially with Cutter Boley there under center. And when it comes to Vanderbilt, they haven't exactly set the world on fire the last couple weeks. I mean, the one thing that makes me nervous is defensively, they've given up 72 points in the last 2 games. And that was one of them was against an Auburn team that I didn't even know Auburn had 38 points in them. You know what I mean? So that was something that Clark Lee addressed prior to the bye week, that the defense needs to get fixed. And from a standpoint of Diego Pavia had a great game against Auburn, but hasn't really needed to play like a superhero this season. That was the MO at the start of the year. So last year he had to play like a superhero in every single game and pretty much will their team to victory. And you would see the talent on this roster and say he didn't have to do that a lot this year, but lately he has. And so the fact that it is also senior day and emotions are running high and you're coming off a bye and then maybe looking ahead to that Tennessee game, as you mentioned, the rivalry game next week, a lot of factors just make me a little bit nervous. Now, I think Vanderbilt is the better team. Do I think they win? Yes, but I think if it's close, that could be a little bit dangerous.
Absolutely. And I think if Kentucky were to have lost those games, it would be a little different. It would feel very, very trappy. But I think the fact that they won those games, maybe Clark Lee can, cut on that film and say, hey, these guys are a really dangerous football team. Of course, Diego Pavia, the starting quarterback, gets a lot of comparisons to Johnny Manziel. And Manziel came to one of the games. One of the things that Manziel did, he was able to parlay the hype with the play on the field and then ended up winning college football's ultimate prize, the Heisman Trophy. What's the path? What's the avenue for Diego Pavia to do that same thing in that same jersey number?
Well, he's got to absolutely win out the rest of the way, and not just win out, but style points do matter when it comes to that. I mean, we just saw Francisco Mendoza with Indiana. They didn't play exactly their best game, but he had that game-winning drive at the end a couple weeks ago, and obviously the throw in the back of the end zone with the toe tap and all that, and people are remembering those moments, even if the team didn't play their best. So we have Diego here, against Auburn. Yes, it was a close game, but he had amazing numbers, over 300 passing yards, over 110 rushing yards. So it's going to take them to win out and him to look good while doing it. I do think there is a path for Diego to ultimately get to one of those 4 finalists for the Heisman in New York, but he is going to have to put up massive numbers, be really efficient, over 70% completion rate, which is what he's at this year, throw a couple touchdowns, maybe rush a couple, and then maybe have some quotes that get picked up by the local blogs and on social media that go viral.
Go on Bussin' with the Boys again.
Yeah, go on Bussin' with the Boys, or maybe, have a couple celebrities in the crowd who, on Saturday who are, get viral on social media and stuff like that. So there is a path, but the stars have to align as such.
Yeah, maybe he needs to invite Tate McRae out to Nashville for that to happen. But
that would be something.
Yeah, it would. Let's talk a little bit bigger picture here, because I know Clark Lee doesn't want to overlook this game, but something that stood out to me last week was the College Football Playoff Committee had Vanderbilt at 14, and then again this week, not moving at all, obviously, with it being an open week. That give you a little bit more hope that Vanderbilt, if they win these next 2 games, can sneak their way in?
Yeah, it does. I mean, they are going to need to be impressive. Before I thought maybe they were going to have to just win out and the resume should take care of itself. But the problem is, and we talked about it weeks ago, at the beginning of the season, I should say, that Vanderbilt's schedule, it was tough going in, but you look at it now, and because of the teams that lost and football plays itself out, it's not as impressive as maybe it was at the start of the year when you look at the wins that they've had. I mean, South Carolina was number 11 when they beat them. They're nowhere near that team. Same thing with LSU. It was a top 10 win at the time, and now it doesn't look as sexy on the resume. And so they are not going to just have to win out the rest of the way. They're going to have to look impressive. I do think they also need teams like Tennessee, for example, this weekend to get a big win. They can't afford to have Tennessee lower than they are right now when they ultimately play each other. They're going to have Missouri beat Oklahoma, not just for the simple standpoint of knocking Oklahoma, giving them that third loss, but Missouri looking that much more impressive, because then it'll make Vanderbilt's win over them that much more impressive. So they're going to need some help, but I do think there is a path, considering the rest of the schedule compared to maybe some of the other teams isn't as rigorous.
Well, and I think it helps that Tennessee's 3 losses have come to 3 teams that sit inside the college football playoff right now. So I think if you were to beat that Volunteers team, you could make a case there. I'm going to make a hypothetical here, because we love doing those. Say I know Vanderbilt lost against Texas. They made that game close in the 4th quarter. If Texas were to go on and beat Texas A&M to end the year, there's a lot of speculation that Texas will probably be out now just because of that big loss to Georgia. Do you think that helps their case and their resume for that being a quality close loss?
I think it does. I think you would love to have Texas, win out the rest of the way, and especially get a top 5 win, at the end of the season, because then, unless you're really deep dive watching these games and remembering week after week, you're just going to see that it was a 3-point loss. You're not going to notice that, oh my gosh, Texas was up pretty much that entire game and took their foot off the gas at the end. Consequentially, the Alabama loss, though I think that was a much better loss because there was only maybe 2 plays here or there that decided that game. That one doesn't look as close as it may seem from a aerial view, a 16-point loss. But I do think, having those teams that they've already lost to, or they are jockeying with position, win out the rest of the way, unless you're other than maybe in Oklahoma. I do think that certainly helps Vanderbilt's resume when you're stacking it against some of these other borderline at-large teams going into the postseason.
For sure. Staying healthy, of course, is the name of the game this time of year, keeping everybody as healthy as possible as you get ready to play yet another set of games. We got a chance to hear from Clark Lee on practice and how they are handling it with the injuries.
Depth helps that, so the more people that we play, I just don't want to lose that part of it too. Not practice intensity, that hasn't changed. Practice length, we've just been more efficient. So we look at player load as a way for us to, you only have 2 hamstrings as it turns out, and so when you blow one of those out, and if you blow it out in the summer, it's going to be in the entire year you're going to be chasing it down. So we've just taken measures to pay attention to high-speed yardage and move drills around in a way that protect those soft tissue issues in the lower body that can be so troubling. So a lot of attention put to that, and we've kind of found the right mix, but not sacrificing the physical parts of practice, the intense parts of practice.
And one of the big things about Coach is he's always been able to stay on message, whether it's about what he was just talking about with the injuries and practice and being able to limit practice and making a clear line of demarcation of, hey, we're not stopping the physicality, we're just, maybe stopping it at an hour and a half instead of going 2.5 hours or whatever the case is. But speaking of coaches staying on message, this is a really interesting dynamic with Coach Clark Lee, because he is coaching at a place where he legitimately loves and has ties to. But of course, anytime any coach has success, he is going to be tied to other jobs. How do you see him handling that balance and the way that that comes across to his team as well? Because you're kind of having to play 2 games, or 3 games really, if you're counting recruiting your current team, and the way to handle the outside noise.
Yeah, the one thing with Clark, when his name gets mentioned in a lot of these jobs, it's so different from somebody else because, like you mentioned, he's from Vanderbilt. He's a hometown kid here in Nashville. He knows what it's like to win there and how special it is. So when it comes to convincing your players that stability is going to be a thing moving forward, he could lean on that. Yeah. It's much different than another coach who is being named in a coaching cycle, and you take your pick on the amount of coaches in the coaching cycle this year. Who that's just words at that point. And Clark Lee, I don't have any insight or behind the scenes knowledge as to what his decision is going to be. But I do think that if I had to bet on it, that he would be in a Vanderbilt sideline for years to come, just because this is his dream job. He wants to turn Vanderbilt into a top tier SEC program. He doesn't want it to be one of those things where, hey, I'm here one day and then gone the next just because I've had some success. And so I think the fact that he can lean on that not only to the current players the rest of the way so they don't get distracted with the task at hand, but he can lean on that when it comes to recruiting as well and trying to sell guys on the program who maybe wouldn't otherwise be sold on Vanderbilt because they didn't know that what they were getting before, and now you do.
Julian, maybe you should tell that to Lane Kiffin as well. Maybe you should try to. He keeps on saying, "Come to the SIP." He just posted about it this morning. So I mean, the trolling is just at an all-time level there with Lane. But speaking of this Kentucky team, it definitely is a little bit more interesting now, seeing where the team has gone since the Auburn game. Obviously, that was the start of their 3-game win streak. Had that insane win over Florida where they just blew them out, looked like the better team, and then last week beat a good Tennessee Tech team. Now, the thing that sticks out to me is that bullet on the bottom, they need one more win for bowl eligibility. What do you are you concerned? I know you're a little bit concerned about the upset, but what happens if Vanderbilt goes down early? Do you think that the mindset is going to shift there on that Commodore sideline?
They have gone down early, particularly against Auburn, and then they were able to play with some desperation because Diego was just going to be Diego. However, I will say that though Vanderbilt, I think, is going to come in pretty desperate because they're going to have to win out to keep their playoff hopes alive. Similarly, with that last bullet point on that full screen that you had, with Kentucky going to be desperate to get that one win to get bowl eligible. They still have, obviously, Louisville after this, but I think it's one of those things where you didn't expect it, and then you rattle off 3 wins in a row, and all of a sudden, well, maybe we can believe we can get a postseason opportunity here. Yeah. And to put a cherry on top, upset Vanderbilt and an SEC rival and knock them out of postseason contention. All I'm saying is, if you're Vanderbilt, you need a fast start because that's what almost doomed them against Auburn and doomed them against Texas. They got out of playing Vanderbilt football, which is running the ball, time of possession, shortening the game. And if Kentucky, if you allow a team like that to hang around a little bit, you don't want to play with fire when it comes to the fourth quarter ultimately.
Absolutely.